Hi everybody, I'm Marky Billson. Tri-City Sports Now is the name of the program. 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities is the name of the station. Happy to be here with you. I want to get this. I hinted to a SEC team is being picked to win the College World Series this year. And sure enough, Arkansas. They were picked to win the national championship by D1Baseball.com yesterday. Arkansas will win its first national title, which I'm surprised about because Arkansas has produced some pretty good baseball players over the years. As a kid, I was a Pirates fan, and Johnny Ray and Jeff King were both from Arkansas. Okay, ball players from the past. Johnny Ray, a very underrated baseball player. Okay, no player from the years 1982 to 1987 hit more doubles in Major League Baseball than Johnny Cornelius Ray. There you go. Toughest man to strike out a lot of those years as well. And the greatest tragedy in the history of society was when Steve Sachs won the Writers' Award for the Rookie of the Year over Johnny Ray in 1982. Thank you, Sporting News, for selecting the right person for your Rookie of the Year awards. Anyway, Arkansas will win its first national title, says Kendall Rogers. You'll see in a couple of weeks why some might not say that is too bold of a call. But basically, they've got a real good starting rotation. It is led by, remember these names for the future, Blaine Knight and Isaiah Campbell. Blaine Knight and Isaiah Campbell. So remember those names as time goes by. And also another guy who could be one of those speedy center fielders that you might see in the majors in future years, Dominic Fletcher. So remember the name of the pitchers, Blaine Knight and Isaiah Campbell, and then Dominic Fletcher. I mean, in the 90s, for instance, R.A. Dickey, Todd Helton, you could see those stars coming out of the Tennessee baseball program and making, then becoming big major league stars. Took a while for R.A. Dickey, but nevertheless, it was something really, you knew that something big was brewing in the 90s in Knoxville, and they made the College World Series. So the preseason pick, at least by D1Baseball.com, Arkansas to win the College World Series this year. I'd love to be able to say something like, we'll see what Shadden Peavy House and Coastal Carolina say about that. But that would be too homeristic. That would be just shilling for the locals. I mean, that would not be, that would. Although, Peavy House, he throws 90. I wonder if he can improve his velocity at Coastal Carolina, and there are ways that one can do that with release points and such. Then, perhaps Peavy House could be a major league prospect out of Coastal Carolina, which has been a pretty good baseball program in its history. And again, speaking of old ball players like only I can, anybody remember third baseman played for the Braves for a cup of coffee, but really known for the Seattle Mariners again, it was back in the 80s, but Jim Presley is from Coastal Carolina. That's the one guy that I can remember. And Chris Berman calling him Jim Hound Dog Presley. Obvious reasons why. That was a good time. Maybe the nickname was better than the ball player, but he was a Coastal Carolina product. So we'll see. There is some precedence for putting legitimate ball players in the major leagues, as well as winning national championships in the Coastal Carolina program, where two players, including Unicoi County Shadden Peavy House from the Tri-Cities, have been playing, or I will play, in future seasons. I'm Marky Billson. I mentioned that there would be one coach who is no longer on the hot seat. One coach no longer on the hot seat. And that coach is a guy we talked about last week, Marvin Lewis. Now, I realize the Cincinnati Bengals, that's not, a real big topic of discussion in the Tri-Cities. Reds, yes. Bengals, no. Go figure it out. I actually can, I'll tell you what. I think that the Reds, this dates back before the Braves moved in '66 when they were the closest team to the area. And if you want to go back to that, Grandpa's team becomes my team type of thing, then The Washington Redskins games were always televised in the South, and they were televised in the Tri-Cities into the 90s, up until the Carolina Panthers moved. Not so much the Titans, but the Panthers. So you have that status, and I think that, the Bengals, they're born in expansion in a season, if you want to get technical about it, after the Braves moved to Atlanta. I think the Bengals' first year was 68 under Paul Brown. But that was not a regional team. That was not going to be, a team that was going to take certainly the Redskins, and as the NFL grew in the 70s on TV, the Cowboys or the Steelers were always shown on Channel 5 off the tube. And plus, the Bengals never won like the aforementioned teams that I have discussed. There's no Bengals following around here. But I do think that Marvin Lewis has some local ties, in that when Mike Smith from ETSU, now the Tampa Bay defensive coordinator, was his first pro job was Marvin Lewis's linebackers coach when Lewis was the defensive coordinator of the Ravens. And Lewis also was the defensive coordinator for Steve Spurrier's Redskins in 2002. So there's some local ties that Lewis has that maybe other people aren't so aware of. Anyway, Marvin Lewis got a 2-year contract extension on Tuesday. So I thought about this. He is now the second longest tenured, he still is the second longest tenured coach in the NFL. Why would you bring back Marvin Lewis after a couple of 9-loss seasons? Especially when he has an 0-7 playoff record. And although I've done features on Marvin Lewis, I like Marvin Lewis, okay? But I don't like everything about him. 0-7 in the playoffs, and I always say, judge a coach by his playoff record, or a manager as the case may be. Strategy wins out in the postseason when talent is often equal. Talent wins out in the regular season. So judge a coach by the postseason. Lewis, not so good. But also I ask, I don't like the fact that there are so many players that seem to get in trouble out of Cincinnati. But I think the reason why Lewis is coming back is that the Bengals are a very lean staff. Mike Brown is a general manager. When Mike Brown inherited the program, listen to me, the team from Paul Brown, his father, the legendary Paul Brown, maybe the greatest football coach ever, he hired David Shula, Don's son, to be his coach. Shula lost game after game after game. What had been a respectable football franchise, it made the Super Bowl twice in the 80s, was now a laughing stock, and they lost, and Shula was kept for 5 years. Nobody could figure it out. Loyalty? That's good. But really, you think about it, it took a 2-14 season to get rid of Dick LeBeau. How long have people have put up with Bruce Coslett? For as long as they did. They gave a lot of loyalty, and I think you're seeing that just the way that Mike Brown oft criticized, but just the way that he believes to handle an organization. So he keeps around the all-time leader in victories as a head coach. I don't know if there's anything wrong with that, except that 0-7 playoff record and the fact that, well, he seems to bring in people that populate a lot of Cincinnati jails. Just this thought, though. I think that one of the reasons for the loyalty is, the Bengals have had success. They never made the playoffs 5 straight years before. Lewis didn't do much in the playoffs, but they never made it that way before. And I think that, there's something to be said for that. I think also, though, that Brown knows, and he's the general manager, when he was in charge before Marvin Lewis, just what a laughingstock the franchise was. And right now, the only guy who's ever had success, he himself, not his father, but he himself has had, is Marvin Lewis. And do you want to cut your ties with such an individual? I think that's why he's being brought back. Now, I think Lewis would be a better coach at other places. I really do. I mean, look at the defense that he put forth in Baltimore 15, I guess now 18 years ago. The 2000 Ravens, who set a record, fewest points allowed in a 16-game season. He also was a linebackers coach in Pittsburgh when they went to the Super Bowl back in 1995 under Bill Cowher. So Marvin Lewis, I've said that he could coach my team, but if I was having him coach my team, I would have this caveat. He does a lot of personnel decisions, and as I mentioned last week, it seems to me that he's got an off. Okay, Pac-Man Jones, yeah, he gets into problems off the field, but can he play? Can he play? That's what I care about. I don't care about the 3 misdemeanors and the potential felony. I care about, can he play? I'll take care of the 3 misdemeanors and the potential felony. I'll get him to right his ship, blah, blah, blah. Pac-Man Jones arrested 10 times. I know, I'll get him to play here. A lot of coaches, they take that mentality. I think that he would be better served with a real GM and not Mike Brown, who could filter these people away, who could filter away, the mood swings on the field of Vontaze Burkett or whoever else that result in the unsportsmanlike penalty that cost the Bengals their last playoff game 2 years ago against the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers were not getting into field goal range with a dead-armed Ben Roethlisberger. They're running the ball on 3rd and 7 with less than a minute left, for crying out loud, on their own side of the field. 30 yards of penalties, unsportsmanlike, against the Bengals put the Steelers in field goal position and in position for them to win the game. That was, the undisciplined player that maybe Lewis should develop a better filter for. Just saying. But anyway, 2-year extension. I think the reason why Mike Brown knows, I never won here before Lewis. I think Lewis would have gotten a job somewhere as a coordinator. I don't know, Arizona has a job right now, Arizona State seems to be bringing in old pro coaches. Oh, why not Arizona? If they didn't rehire him, I actually am not so much. I would say if you could get him a filter, because Lewis makes a lot of those personnel decisions himself. If you get him a filter where you say, Marvin, maybe not Pac-Man. Marvin, maybe not this guy. Maybe instead, let's look at this guy. He does charity at the old folks' home on the weekends. Someone like that, and he can play. He runs a 4.640. He can get it done. On the other hand, remember Taj Boyd, who caught the winning touchdown pass that knocked Baltimore out of the playoffs and gave Cincinnati a dramatic victory in the last week of the season in a game that was televised locally. Or at least the play was. I would just say this. That player, he got arrested during the year. So maybe there's, what? I know that those guys, they keep the police department of Cincinnati busy, but by gosh, they make the plays. Yeah, Marvin, I wonder if any other player had performed as well as Taj Boyd in catching that pass on 4th and 12 from Andy Dalton. If it would... that was a Marvin Lewis player, for better or worse. Well, we can't. Look at what they do. We can't get rid of this guy. Come on. I wonder how much that saved his job. A couple of 9-loss seasons, but even so. Of course, only the Bengals would think that way. Only Mike Brown would, Just anyway. By the way, the first guy that brought Marvin Lewis to the playoffs, Carson Palmer, quarterback, his overall first-round selection back in 2003. This isn't a surprise. He's retiring after 15 years in the league. No Super Bowls for Palmer. Okay. It was kind of a surprise he came back this year with Arizona. New broom is sweeping clean in Arizona, what with Bruce Arians retiring. And, it seemed time. So there's not a big surprise there. And so it looks like a rebuilding process for Arizona. Does that mean that Larry Fitzgerald will also retire? A storyline to look for in the NFL when we go into the off season. Hey, when we come back, Tennessee played Auburn in basketball. I know that Tennessee basketball is something of an afterthought to a lot of people, but there are 3 things to take from it, according to All for Tennessee, and we will be telling you what they are when Tri-City Sports Now returns.
Range, a fella can get a bit saddle sore. That's why I use Blue